Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the first episode of the Meghan Markle podcast called Archetypes? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at a brief background of Meghan Markle, move to the summary of the first episode of her podcast, then offer my analysis. Meghan Markle was born in Los Angeles on August 4, 1981. After graduating from Catholic high school, Meghan enrolled at Northwestern University in Illinois. She became an intern at the American Embassy in Buenos Aires after her junior year. Meghan took the Foreign Service Officer test, but did not score high enough to advance with the U.S. State Department. In 2003, she graduated with a bachelor's degree. Not long after this, Meghan found work as an actress. She had a number of small roles, but eventually joined the cast of the TV show Suits in 2011. This same year, Meghan married a film producer, but they divorced 2 years later. After another failed relationship, this time with a celebrity chef, Meghan started dating Prince Harry in July of 2016. The couple married in May of 2018. Meghan became the Duchess of Sussex. In January of 2020, the couple announced they were going to step back as senior members of the royal family and move to the United States. In March of 2021, Meghan and Harry were interviewed by Oprah Winfrey. Essentially, the interview featured Meghan complaining about how the royal family did not like her and how they ignored her mental health concerns. Meghan made it seem as though she really didn't understand what royal life was like when she met Prince Harry. She was taken by surprise. She complained that the tabloids in Britain never liked her, while conveniently failing to mention the content of some of those articles. For example, the allegation that she bullied the royal family staff. Meghan thought that the royal family's disapproval stemmed from her race, level of independence, divorced status, and her tendency to be outspoken. Meghan was disappointed in the royal family for not protecting her and regrets believing in their promises. After becoming quasi-royalty and moving to California, Meghan and Prince Harry have wandered about somewhat aimlessly. They signed multi-million-dollar deals and engaged in charitable work, but never really expressed a clear plan that illustrated what value they have to offer to the public. There is this sense that they believe they are very important and have some type of incredible contribution to make to society. It's just not clear what that contribution is supposed to be in the absence of any demonstrable skills or abilities. Now moving to the summary of the first episode of the Archetypes podcast. This episode was released on August 23, 2022. The podcast starts off with Meghan telling a story about how when she was 11 years old, she wrote a letter to Procter & Gamble. Meghan complained because they had a commercial for Ivory dish soap which talked about how women were fighting greasy pots and pans with the soap. Meghan wanted the word women changed to people. She was excited when 3 months later, a new version of the ad contained the word people as she requested. This experience helped Meghan to realize how women were boxed in by society. Accordingly, Meghan's podcast, Archetypes, is about subverting the labels which attempt to hold women back. The guest on the first episode was the tennis player, Serena Williams, who was going to speak with Meghan about the construct of ambition. Meghan talked about how the word ambitious never had a negative connotation until she started dating Prince Harry. After Meghan introduced Serena, Prince Harry awkwardly comes into the interview for a moment, like it was completely accidental. He was just wandering the halls and happened to stroll into the room where they were recording. Meghan and Serena talked for a while about being fearless, but the conversation really didn't go anywhere. There's a lot of mutual complimenting going on. Serena then talks about how she has not always been treated fairly. There's a double standard in tennis. Men were treated better than women. Then we hear the opinion of a professor who talks about how certain behaviors are rated more negatively in women as compared to men, like an ambitious woman might be called manipulative and power-hungry, whereas a man who is ambitious might be considered a role model or a captain of industry. Meghan tells a story about one of her royal trips to South Africa. She was in Cape Town when a heater in the nursery caught fire. Someone smelled smoke and the fire was extinguished. Megan's 4-month-old son was not in the nursery, but he was supposed to be sleeping there. Megan was pressured to continue carrying out other official engagements and didn't have time to recover from this traumatic experience. Megan and Serena briefly talked about Serena's retirement. Then the conversation moved back to being extremely boring as opposed to just the normal level of boring I was expecting. Essentially, they just talked about how great they were, so revisiting the mutually complementing stage. Megan wraps up the show by mentioning how ambitious women are labeled as aggressive, selfish, and calculating. This is unfair, as being ambitious is a beautiful thing. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me with the first episode of Meghan Markle's podcast. Item number 1. One missed opportunity in this podcast was that the audience really didn't hear much from Serena Williams. She is an extremely successful and talented tennis player who has overcome difficult experiences to succeed. The podcast episode would have been much more interesting if Meghan was less obsessed with talking about herself and more interested in Serena Williams. There's the sense that Meghan steered the conversation toward boring topics. She never let Serena Williams really talk about a lot of interesting things. We did learn something about Serena, however. She allowed herself to be convinced by Meghan to come on the podcast. Serena is generous to a fault. I suppose if Serena returned for another episode, that would make it a double fault. Item number 2 is the fire incident in South Africa. This is the incident where Meghan said the heater in the nursery caught on fire. This incident occurred in September of 2019 in Cape Town. People who were present for the incident did not remember anything about a fire. Rather, they said the heater was smoking, therefore it was unplugged. Meghan, Harry, and her son were moved to a different location, and the problem was solved. There's no doubt that even without a fire, a smoking heater is not a great idea. Doesn't really seem safe. It's understandable that Meghan would be upset, but she made it seem as though she was pressured into continuing with the engagements. Meghan was a senior royal at that time. She could have refused. I find it interesting that Meghan also suggested that she really wanted to tell people what happened at the time of the incident. I'm not sure what good this would have done. What was her message? Heaters are dangerous? Why did she want to tell people so badly? I think what really bothered Meghan about this incident is that she was denied something that she values above all else, playing the victim, although she made up for it on the podcast. Which brings me to item number 3. The theme of this podcast was Meghan getting revenge against the royal family and anyone who criticized her. The ambition topic was not chosen at random. Rather, it was selected by Meghan deliberately in order for her to even the score. All the various criticisms that have been thrown Meghan's way have activated her vindictiveness. I find it curious that she started her podcast with an episode about being ambitious, because one could argue that being called ambitious is a compliment. Meghan set up this episode so that if somebody believed she was ambitious, she looks good, because ambition is a positive trait. If somebody believed that she was falsely called ambitious, she still looks good, because she was the victim of unfair criticism. Here's the analogy I would use for this. Imagine a character actor who plays tough guys in movies. Often these roles are played by people who are not particularly physically attractive. Maybe this particular character is called ugly by many people, which is offensive to him. He wants to get back at these people, but not make it obvious that his feelings are hurt. He doesn't want people to know that what they said affected him. Therefore, he reframes the criticism by saying that people keep calling him distinctive. He never mentions the word ugly. He can deny being distinctive or admit to being distinctive. He wins either way. More importantly, he feels better about himself either way. Moving back to Meghan, I think Meghan is trying to rewrite some of the statements made by her detractors. I don't think that many people are really mad that Meghan is ambitious. I think they're upset because she became rich and famous only after marrying a prince, yet acts like she is some amazing person who deserves fame and fortune. Meghan doesn't express a sense of gratitude. She really wasn't a well-known actress before meeting Harry. It wasn't like she was on her way to being a legend when she met him. Meghan is trying to convert terms like social climber, attention-seeking, and self-serving into the term ambition. She is trying to reframe the argument so she can't lose. Meghan's critics were not really referring to ambition. Often critics select terms carefully. When they called her a manipulative opportunist, that's exactly what they meant. Item number 4. I find it interesting that when Meghan was a full-fledged member of the royal family, she did not want attention or publicity. At least that's how she made it seem. Meghan and Harry just wanted to run away and live a life of peace. Yet now, by signing multi-million-dollar media deals, they are deliberately trying to stay in the spotlight. I don't think Meghan had a problem with the attention she received when she was in the royal family. I think her problem was she didn't like the content of the attention. She didn't like what people were saying, and she couldn't defend herself. She could not act on her desire for revenge. Meghan didn't want to be restricted. She wanted to be able to respond. For many years, members of the royal family have largely ignored criticism, but Meghan was too insecure to live up to the tradition of silent dignity and forbearance. Item number 5, Meghan's podcast was almost an hour long. Yet other than defending herself and otherwise talking about herself, she didn't really say anything interesting. Perhaps as far as Meghan, there was not much substance available to be revealed. This is one problem with ascending to undeserved popularity and then demanding attention. What is she going to do with that attention? What is she going to say? Meghan really hasn't done anything that required any type of talent or ability. A lot of people know how to get married. She just happened to marry someone wealthy and famous. I find it curious that one of her most meaningful accomplishments was a letter she wrote to Procter & Gamble when she was 11. I'm sure it was a nice letter and everything, but was that really the peak of her career? When Meghan is done satisfying her vindictiveness against her critics, what's left? I doubt that people are going to be too excited about hearing stories of hardship from a famous millionaire. Which brings me to item number 6. Given that Meghan and Harry don't have anything interesting to say, their deal with Spotify creates a bit of a dilemma. Meghan and Harry entered into the deal in December of 2020, yet the first episode did not come out until August of 2022. What took so long? Were they spending all that time trying to think of an idea? Not including Meghan, 28 people worked to produce the show, many of them executive producers. With all these people and all this money, this episode supposedly about ambition is the best Meghan could come up with? This is really the best show that was possible? What a tragic and expected disappointment. Item number 7. Much of the allure of the royal family is the mystery behind it. Royalty comprises people who are artificially elevated and watched by the public. Part of the fun of the game is trying to figure out what they are really like without them saying too much about themselves. People look at every expression and wonder what the royal family member is thinking. They watch short interviews and pick up on every word. There's something about that lifestyle that allows people to vicariously live through them. When too much is known about the family member, the fun value can be destroyed. This is what happened with Meghan. In her podcast, she has demonstrated that she has little to offer except the power to bore people to tears. Meghan has demonstrated that she is grandiose, arrogant, self-centered, and has a sense of entitlement. If she had focused her show on other people and restricted the flow of information about herself, she would have maintained the public's fascination with her secrets. Meghan would have remained interesting in a sense, but instead, the veil of secrecy has been removed only to reveal the Duchess of Dullness. Now moving to my final thoughts. When Meghan and Harry first broke away from the royal family, I was inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they really were victims of terrible offenses who became unable to fulfill their desires. Now it would seem that their argument has disintegrated. Yes, the royal family interfered with the couple's shared goal, but that goal was to seek attention, power, and glory by proving to the world how much they suffered. They seem to be fascinated with archetypes, but instead of famous examples like the hero, the explorer, or the outlaw, they've created a new archetype, the privileged victim. Those are my thoughts on the first episode of the podcast Archetypes. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comments section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.